So welcome to this video. Today I have with me Emma Dodson, the Invincible Woman on Wheels, or at least that's the title of her blog. And Emma and I are going to talk about traveling in London using a wheelchair because she's an expert. So Emma, you want to give us a little bit of your background?
So I started the blog about 4 years ago now, just from a trip that I actually started taking 4 years ago today, that I took with some friends to go to Milan and then Sicily, and they learned a lot from me from then about traveling in a wheelchair and what it's like. And they said, "Oh, why don't you just start telling everyone else?" And so I did, while I was still at uni in London. Started talking to everyone about like what I was doing there and what it was like traveling around and that kind of thing. And then it's just sort of grown, and now it's this. I'm doing things like this.
Oh, well, very nice. So you have a passion like I do about sharing information to help others, and that's commendable. So let's talk about, what is London like traveling with a wheelchair?
It's very complex, because London in itself is complex anyway, because it's so big and you've got the tube and the trains and everything else. And because the access is kind of hit and miss. I think it's about 25% of the tube is accessible. So trying to find out which stations you can use and which stations you can't use, it takes a lot of work, and you have to become an expert. Like, my friends are always joking with me, why do you have all the tube lines on Twitter and why do you know all of this information like the back of your hand? And I say to them, it's because I have to, because I don't feel, or I didn't feel, I probably do a little bit more now, but I didn't feel like I could just roll up and figure it out, because it's so complex. I was like, I need to know what I'm doing, otherwise I get a bit lost and I don't really know where to go. And I think that's the main thing, is like I needed to know it just for my own comfort, because I didn't know what would happen if something went wrong. I was like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. I think that's the main thing, is it's so complex and so much to figure out.
Yeah, as we were talking beforehand, I tried to help somebody in my Facebook group, find some directions in London, and I was able to do it, but it took hours of research. So let me ask you this question then: how do you plan for a trip with your wheelchair, whether you're going just into London or just whether you're traveling in general? What are some of the things that you like to do to plan for a trip?
So I like to know where we're going to end up. So if we're going to London, I'm like, okay, so which places are we going to? And my friends are always like, let's just figure it out. I'm like, I can't do that. For my own brain, I just can't do that. So I have to know where we're going. And then I have to go on, if we're doing into London, I'll go on the London tube map, which I think now has an app as well on the phone, where you can put in where you're starting from on your destination, and it will tell you a standard route, and then you can click wheelchair accessible as well, and it will give you the wheelchair accessible routes. And then I will go onto Google Maps, or just asking friends, and be like, the internet tells me this, or like the web page tells me this. From your experience, is that kind of right? Because I have had issues before where the online stuff has not been updated and it's been wrong, and then I get to the tube station and I'm like, oh yeah, you can't do that. I'm kind of like, okay, now I don't know what I'm doing, especially because I plan my times to whatever I find on the internet. So if you plan for an hour and a half, and then someone turns around and says, oh yeah, you can't do that, but if you go with this extra half an hour, it's like, well, I didn't plan for that, and now I'm going to be late. So I need to know exactly where we're going to be going, like how long I'm supposed to be taking to get there, kind of if I have things to go to, when do I need to be there. And then I'm kind of thinking, okay, so I've got to do step by step. I've got to get to this station, and then I've got to get to this station, I've got to be on the tube for this long. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, what are the things that can go wrong, and how do I know how to fix them? So most of the stuff at this point, I know, like I've had issues, most of the issues. So I know, okay, if this happens, then this is the solution, because I've fixed it already. But I am just kind of thinking ahead of like, okay, what are the different things? Because I need to have plans in place, because I know as a person, if something goes wrong and I don't know how to fix it, I just freak out. Like, I'm not very helpful. And it's just better for me to have all the solutions already there, so I can just pick the solution when I need it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that again, having a plan A, B, and C is really important when you're traveling, because not everything works like you expect it to. something will happen and the station is closed or the lift is broken. Because it seemed like a lot of the stations had lifts, right, to get down to the tube.
Yeah, a lot of them do. If they're accessible, the way they're accessible is to have a lift. There's only been a few that I call the roll-in ones, which is where like you can just roll in and the trains are right at that level. Which one of them was luckily was my uni station that I was at in London, Uxbridge, which is not London. If anyone's watching this from London, I know Uxbridge isn't London. Don't yell at me in the comments, please. Because I know people will be like, it's not London. I know, but it has a tube station, so it counts. But there's only a few of those that I've seen. The rest of them are like at least one lift, if not two. Some of them, especially in central London, where they have several lines, because there's several levels, you've got to go down like 2 or 3 lifts to go from street level down to the gate line and then down to which, like if you're going to the lowest levels, like the lowest tube lines, you're going down 2 or 3 lifts. And the likelihood of all those lifts working, from my experience, not really. Like you'll get one that works and then they're like, oh, you can't go to the Jubilee line, but you can go to the central line. So, well, I need the Jubilee line, thanks. So you think it's accessible and then you're like, oh no, it's not, cool. Yeah, and in central London, it's not so bad because there's another station close enough that you can just walk there and there's probably a route round you can take. But getting towards where I was in uni, the stations are that far apart that you have to take at least like 2 buses to get to the next station.
Okay, and so that actually brought up a question. So if you're taking service transportation, how are the buses with the wheelchair? Does that work pretty well, or?
I think that they're from living in other cities now. Now I'm in Birmingham, I have more understanding of the different cities and different buses. I think the London ones are better because they have a ramp in the middle. So you just like wave at the driver and then he can press a button in the cab and the ramp comes out. Or I think you can press a button on the actual bus on the outside. Well, I can never reach those because I'm too short. So I think the London buses are better, but the issue is with it being an electronic ramp or like a mechanical ramp, obviously if the ramp gets stuck, you're kind of stuck, especially on the bus. You can get on it and it's fine. You try and get off and the ramp's stuck, you're like, I don't know what to do. And I have no way off, especially for me, because I'm electric wheelchair user, so I can't like bunny hop off the bus like you could in a manual chair maybe. I'm just like, I am stuck. And people are like, oh, we'll just lift it. I'm like, it's literally about 3 tons. That will break several backs and I'm not gonna put you through that or put me through that. Yeah. So I think they're better. And I like the buses for their accessibility and kind of, I know the buses will work better than I would expect the tube to work, if you know what I mean. Like I trust the buses to work more than I do the tube. But taking a bus across London does take forever. So like in terms of time, it's a balance between which one's going to work better and which one's going to be quicker.
Okay. Yeah. And so let me ask this question because, and I apologize, I didn't give you this one in advance too. I'm bad about that. But one thing that I've heard in talking with people is that in London, in particular, at least, that finding an accessible taxi is not too hard.
I think they exist fine. Like you can, because all black cabs, the London black cabs, as far as I'm aware, have to have wheelchair accessibility and they have ramps that they take out of the boot or whatever. And then they just unfold the ramp and click it onto the back of the cab and you get in. But I don't like traveling in them because they feel very small and claustrophobic to me. And my wheelchair is not the smallest thing in the world, so it just about fits, which I just feel very hemmed in all the time. And also, I don't know if this was just the one cab that I've ever, like one of the like 3 cabs I've ever taken, but I took a cab and they didn't strap me in. Like they didn't like strap the chair to the cab, which they're supposed to do. They're supposed to like put some kind of chains on so it stays in place. And it didn't. They didn't do that. So then I was being thrown around the whole time I was in the cab for like a 30-minute ride from Heathrow back to my uni accommodation, which is not pleasant because you're kind of like, I thought I was going to fall out at certain points and that's not very fun. So I think they're accessible and you can probably get one easy, but the actual experience of being in them, I'm not so keen on. I do know some people who swear by them, but I think it depends on the person and the wheelchair, like which wheelchair they're using. And because I know some people can't even fit their chairs in the cabs. It's a very hit and miss thing. It's kind of about knowing what works for you.
Yeah, and I could see that very easily because, you know, you look, I was looking at some rental scooters for a cruise we have coming up, and it's amazing the difference in the size, you know, and the footprint of it, how wide they are, how long they are. And if you're trying to get in some kind of accessible transportation, that could make the difference between being able to get in and not get in.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with a lot of accessible transport, like in London, in Birmingham, anywhere really. They say they're accessible, and it's like, well, there's a lot of factors to that. There's a lot of different things. And so I always like to do my own research and figure it out for myself, or like ask my friends, because my friends will know kind of what my chair is, what my mobility is. They kind of know me. So I'm like, what? You've been in it. What do you think? Because I don't really trust, if it just says accessible, I'm like, okay, give me the details, because there are many factors that could be yes or no, and it's very variable. I think a lot of disabled people will tell you like disability is variable, which means the mobility aids and all the stuff we need to help us is variable, which means you can't just be like accessible or not. There's levels to it, and I think that's kind of a thing that people need to take into account, is that it's not a blanket thing. It can't be, because disability doesn't work in that way.
Yeah, you know, and that's been my experience, is that every individual is different. You know, I have a forum, a Facebook group for people that travel with challenges, you know, and we have the full spectrum, people that have hearing impairment, blind people. We have one lady that I talk to quite often, and they're trying to help her. She travels with a guide dog, and her mom is in a scooter. So now you've got two different disabilities, and you're trying to go together. And so all of those things, and that's what, you know, I agree with you. You know, the key thing is to research, you know, figure out where you need to go and what are the best options to get there. So in general, in the UK, what's train travel like? Is it?
Train travel is, I have a love-hate relationship with the trains. In that I love trains. People will tell you, if I book a train, I'm like, yay, trains. But also the process of booking a train as a wheelchair user in the UK it's just very difficult and very long. In that you've got to book. So I book my train tickets on an app, and then I've got to book assistance at least 24 hours in advance. So I can't go anywhere. Well, you can, but like you get kind of yelled at. You're like, they shouldn't really do that. You can't really go anywhere spontaneously because you have to book it in advance, which is annoying. And then you've got to turn up at least 20 minutes before your train to be met by assistant staff to be put on the train. But the actual process of putting you on the train takes like 5 minutes, because it's walk down, unfold the metal ramp, put the metal ramp to the train, get on the train. So I'm like, why am I sat here for 30 minutes when the thing you need to do takes you 5 minutes? And then I'm always, the worst bit for me is getting on the train, and then when you get to the other end, because they're supposed to call ahead and be like, yes, person X who booked the train is here, we've put them on the train, they're in X carriage, so that they know, the staff at the other end know where to pick you up from. The amount of times I have been left on a train and had to yell for help because no one's turned up is kind of terrifying. And the fact that I like I said, I can't jump off the train because the trains here are quite high up. It varies based on the train company and the station and a lot of things, but most of the time it's pretty high up. So you can't, even if you were in a manual wheelchair, I don't think I'd want to bunny hop it. And I can't in the electric chair. So I'm just kind of stuck, like I can't get off the train until someone helps me. And I know that they're just gonna, if they don't see me and they don't get me off, I'm just going to go back to wherever I was coming from, or even further. And so I end up yelling for help, and then I'll have station staff be like, oh, but we have 20 minutes to, like, our time window to get you off the train is 20 minutes. It's like, well, I don't have 20 minutes to sit and wait. I've got meetings to be at. Like, I go into London for meetings for blog stuff when we're not in Corona times and it's not virtual. I'm like, I have meetings to be at. I need to get off this train like everyone else does. I think it's just the the length of the whole thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I have friends who, like, if I speak to my friends, I'm like, when do you leave for your train? And they're like, I start walking like 20 minutes before I get to the train, like 5 minutes before I run to the platform I get on. I'm like, I have to leave my house at least an hour before any train because I've got to walk all the way to the station, sit there for 20 minutes, knowing that it takes 5 minutes to put me on the train. And then I've got to spend the entire time in anxiety being like, can I get off the train? Like, can I get off the train? Is the lift going to be broken? Is like, there's so many variables again where you're like, is it all going to work? And it's only when I get out of the train station at the other end, I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's
I
really
made
annoying
it,
because I
I'm on
love
time.
trains.
Yeah. You know, and that's funny. I am a huge train fan too. My wife and I were down in Miami, which is about probably 14-hour ride from where we live in North Carolina, and I could have flown in an hour and a half, but we took the train back just because I love riding a train. I tell people riding in the train is the next best thing to cruising because it's like cruising on land, especially in the US where you have long distance runs and you'll have meal service. And we had the last time we did an accessible cabin, though I had a interview with a lady that she did an accessible cabin, but she and her boyfriend were both used a wheelchair, and those cabins are set for one disabled passenger, not two. And so it was no place to put chairs, no place to lay down good. I mean, it was very, very much not a good trip. But
Yeah, I think we're the same here. Like, I try and get, so I have a friend who's in a wheelchair and we try and go places and try and like, go on the trains together and stuff. And they get very confused because they have 2 wheelchair spaces on most of the trains, but they don't expect them to be used ever. And like, we get things where they leave the snack trolleys in the wheelchair spaces. And I'm like, no. Because they're like, oh, but no one's booked the space. I'm like, yeah, but someone might randomly want to get on, which is allowed.
yeah, and that's like that's a challenge. I have one other question I'm gonna throw at you again that I forgot to mention ahead of time. But what's the situation like for somebody that's a tourist in London finding accessible restrooms? Because especially if you're a full-time wheelchair user, being able to find accessible restrooms, at least in some places, can be really difficult. So how is it in let's just say in the UK in general? Is it pretty easy to find, or?
I think it's, I would say, a hit and miss again. I do a lot of research before I go anywhere to see if I can use the bathroom or not. I don't know about like public restrooms where it's just the restroom. I just know about places like in restaurants and stuff. I know there's things like, I think it's called Ewan's Guide, which is a site that you can go on where people have put in where they're like, if a place has a ramp or a lift or any kind of accessibility stuff, they list it all there. There's things like the Sociability app, which I think is just new. There's a similar kind of thing where people put in where access is, so they have toilets and stuff, and it's done by disabled people or like family of disabled people. So I trust that kind of stuff more because I'm like, they will have used it. But a lot of it, you'll see like, oh, we have a disabled toilet, but then you'll get there and like the door's broken, or like the flush is broken, or like they're just like, oh yeah, or they've got stuff in it, like they've got like they're storing things in it. So I need to use it. Like I went to a restaurant once and they were like, yeah, we have a disabled toilet, and then like got there and there was no door, and they were like, oh yeah, the door's broken, just have someone stand there. I was like, that's not great, is it? So I think it's a very hit and miss thing, and it's another one of those things where like I wouldn't want to just go in somewhere and assume they had an accessible restroom, because they don't. The other thing that we have in the UK, which I don't know if it's a international, I think it might be international, is a thing called radar key, which opens every accessible restroom that is on the radar key system. So I think a whole lot of the toilets here, like in the UK at least, are on this system. So you can basically use this key, which I have one, and you can go to any toilet that's on the system and just open it yourself. You don't have to ask anyone, which I found quite nice, because I can just, if I come off the train, say, and I'm like, need the toilet, I can just go to the toilet off the train and then leave the station, and it's not a big fuss. Whereas if I have to go and find someone to open the door, I'm like, I have to go and find someone, and then I've got to go back to the toilet, and then I've got to open it, and then I've got to tell them that they can close it again. So I think it's very hit and miss, but I think the radar key system is only, I think you just like go on their site or something, and you can just buy one for like £15 maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So for a tourist that travels in a wheelchair and needs accessible restrooms, is there a map or something that shows you where the radar key toilets are?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think there might be on those things like the Ewan's Guide or the Sociability app, those kind of systems where they have it all on a map. They probably have this is a radar key toilet, this is not, kind of thing. And maybe there's one on the radar key site where you buy the keys from. I would assume so, just because someone should have that somewhere. But yeah. I wouldn't know off the top of my head to somewhere to send people. I think there should be. If there isn't, I think someone should create one. But I also realize that, like, if you're doing even just doing the whole of the UK, that would probably be a lot of toilets, because I've seen the majority of toilets that I've seen are radar keys.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just a key that the staff have. Like, if it's in the bar, it's a key that the bar staff have, and you have to get hold of the bar staff and ask them to open it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. The one thing I realized about the UK is that a lot of tourist sites may be less accessible because they're, buildings that are 500 years old, and so there's probably some real limitations to where you can go and see and do. In the major attractions in London, is it pretty accessible or not?
I think from what I know, they are more accessible than you maybe think. And I know there's a lot, they're getting a lot better access. I know I had one of the people I follow on Twitter said that the access in the Tower of London was quite good for her and her guide dog and stuff like that. So I think there is a lot more than you would think. But obviously there will still be places that can't do it because of age, particularly with like, things like the Tower of London or all the pieces of kind of tourist places. And there's still things they can do. It's not all perfect. It never will be. But I think it is pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Because, a lot of people that like to travel London would be on. And for my wife and I, we'd love to come to London. My goal is to cruise out of Southampton and then to be able to come up and, and spend a few days in London and do some sightseeing and try to, because we probably won't get that side of the pond very often. So might as well do a little bit of sightseeing while we're here or while we're there.
Yeah, might as well make the most of it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate your time very much today, Emma. What we'll do is for everybody that wants to get a look at your blog, I'll put a link in the description on the YouTube video down below, so you can find a link to her blog. And if you have questions, do me a favor, put them in the comments. And if I can't find the answer, I'll reach out to Emma and see if she has an answer. Collectively, we'll find somebody that has an answer for you. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I always ask that you do, please, and hit the like button. Lets YouTube know that there was something worth watching on the video. And we'll see everybody next time.